This is going to be a review of Brutus 1, which is written by Robert Yates. So, Brutus 1 is an anti federalist paper. It's actually arguing against the Constitution and thinks it's a bad idea, and is almost the exact opposite of what Madison is arguing in Federalist 10. So, it's good to be able to compare Federalist 10 and Brutus 1. So, Yates writes this under the pseudonym of Brutus. Brutus killed Julius Caesar, and the idea was that Rome was a republic, that Julius Caesar was abusing power, and that ultimately he had to be killed for the betterment of like the Roman republic. So Yates kind of saw himself as a similar thing, standing up against people trying to seize too much power for themselves, which is why he wrote it under the pseudonym of Brutus. So the basic thesis of Brutus 1 is that this government set up by the Constitution is going to fail. And there's two primary reasons or two big concerns he has. First, he thinks the Constitution is going to give way too much power to the national government and take it away from the states. And the second argument he's going to make, which makes this directly a comparison to Federalist 10, is that unlike Madison, who believed that democracy would work better in a larger area, Yates felt like it would not work in a country as large as the United States. All right. So the first thing we're going to focus on are a couple of the arguments that he makes about the national government having too much power under the newly proposed Constitution. So there's a section of the Constitution called the Expressed Powers section or clause, and you can find that in Article 1, Section 8. And the way this was supposed to work is as follows. The Founding Fathers, when they designed the Constitution, within Article 1, Section 8, specifically listed all of the powers that the national government could have, right? But the idea was that these would kind of be like the only powers the national government would have. And if it wasn't specifically written down in Article 1, Section 8 and given to the national government, it would be a power that would automatically belong to the states. So the national government gets what's in the Constitution and the states get everything else. So what you see in the chart are the powers found in Article 1, Section 8. But there was a little portion right at the very end of Article 1, Section 8 that says oh, by the way, not only do you have all of these powers, but you also have the ability to make all laws which are necessary and proper to carrying into execution any of the above powers. Basically, Yates was concerned that this was like an escape clause, like a loophole that Congress would use to try and expand their power. That he felt like it was just too broadly written. That okay, yeah, you have the power to do the things that are listed. Oh, and by the way, you also have powers that will help you carry out the things that are listed. He just felt like it would be used in the future by Congress to get away with doing more than what was listed in the Constitution. And we'll talk about it in the remainder of the year, that his concerns were justified, that this is exactly what would happen. But that this little portion at the end of Article 1, Section 8 would be utilized to go beyond what was actually written in the Constitution, and this would take power away from the states and dramatically expand the power of the national government. Another portion of the Constitution Yates was concerned about was Article 6. So Article 6, and you can read what the quote is from Article 6, that section of the Constitution. Basically, we call it the Supremacy Clause. And basically what it means is if there is a treaty that is made by the national government and an agreement made by a state, or if there's a law made by a state that contradicts a law the national government has, that basically it's going to be the national government that wins this fight every day of the week. So the idea is that this is what makes it different from the Articles of Confederation, where the 13 sort of states were kind of almost 13 independent countries, and there was no glue to bind them together. The Supremacy Clause is the glue that binds them together. The states are free to do what they want to do until the national government standardizes it and basically says everybody has to follow this directive. Gates was concerned that the way that this clause would be interpreted in the future would be that any dispute between the states and the national government would allow the national government to win the fight, right? That it wouldn't even be an argument, because the wording of the Constitution makes it that the national government's ideas and laws are above the state ideas and laws. So again, Yates was just concerned that this would be misused or abused by the national government in the future to take power away from and to dominate the state governments. Also, Yates was a little concerned that this new national government was going to be able to tax. One of the things that the national government couldn't do under the Articles of Confederation was force the states to contribute money to the national government. It could ask, it could request, but it couldn't force citizens or states to contribute money to the national government. Yates's concern is that if the national government can tax the citizens, right, that'll ultimately mean that there is less money from the states to get from the citizens themselves. So his argument was like, look, the citizens only have so much money to go around. And if the national government was going to take money from the citizens, what would be left for the states to take from the citizens to run their own state governments? So these are some of the reasons why Yates was concerned about like national government using portions of the Constitution as a proposal to basically take power away from the states and make itself more powerful. All right. The last sort of reason that Yates focuses on as a negative is that he believed the United States was just too large of an area for democracy to work. And again, if you take the time to pause the video and to read the quote, one of the things that he's saying is that if you look at history, there is no example of a democracy working in a geographical area as large as the United States. And one of the things that he was just concerned about is that we can't point to something and say, hey, it worked there. In fact, his argument is any of the democracies and republics, like when they worked well, they basically worked when they were small. As those areas expanded, basically they turned into like tyranny, right? Or dictatorships, right? And his fear was that this was going to happen here too, right? That there's no example we could point to and say, yes, democracy works in an area as large as the United States. And the other major argument is from him, and this is the opposite of Federalist 10, is he felt like a large-sized government would not allow democracy to work. Because in democracy, right, like we have, like a republic, a representative democracy, the citizens select their leaders, but the leaders are supposed to represent the interests of the citizens. His argument is, especially at a time period where there's minimal transportation, right, there's minimal communication, right, advances in technology, that if you had all of your rulers concentrated in a national capital making decisions, they'd be too separated from the citizens. And they wouldn't actually know what the citizens needed or wanted, may not even care, so that if they didn't know what the citizens wanted, they would just make decisions that benefited them or were in their own selfish interests. So the argument that Yates is making is that this won't end up being a republic or a representative democracy. This will be more like an oligarchy where rich like representatives are out of touch with the people that they are representing. They won't know what they want, right? They don't know what they need, and they'll just make decisions that will benefit themselves. So again, Yates is arguing that the size of this new country will prevent democracy from working the way it's supposed to work.